Welcome to On My Shelf. Today I'm talking about the young adult book Girl Unframed by Deb Coletti. Girl Unframed is a really interesting mix of a book, kind of a thriller versus a social commentary type book. It is about a girl named Sydney Riley, who is the daughter of a famous kind of washed up actress, Lila Shore. For a summer, she goes to visit her mother. She doesn't have a great relationship with her mother. And it's kind of all about Sydney coming to terms with who she is as a young woman. That's what young adult books kind of do, is show a coming of age for young people. And so during this summer that she's spending with her mom, who is struggling with not working anymore as a movie star, she is coming to know herself as a young woman and as a person. Her mom is living with a man named Jake, who is an art dealer who has kind of shady and sometimes dangerous connections with people. So there's a little bit of a mystery as to what's happening behind the scenes with that. So during this summer, Sydney is coming to terms with her own body. She's kind of starting to attract the attention of men everywhere. And so as the book ramps up with its kind of thriller and suspense-filled narrative, she's also having social commentary about what beauty means and the expectations that are put on women and the dangers that come to women. And she sees this encompassed in her mother, who is having trouble not being in movies and things like that anymore, and who struggles a lot with aging as far as how that impacts her beauty and her worth as a woman. So, like I said, it's part thriller, part social commentary. And as Sydney starts navigating this increasingly dangerous situation in her home, she is also beginning to understand the politics of beauty and growing up a woman. Deb Coletti has written a lot of books, and the very first one that I was introduced to was A Heart and a Body in the World, which is probably one of my favorite YA books to date. After I read that book, I went back and read some of her others, which include Honey Baby Sweetheart. Both of those books were award-winning books, and they are both really, really well-written, good stories, and kind of like Girl Unframed, with part social commentary, part literary book. It's probably not surprising for me to say that I really did love this book. I listened to it while I was on short runs, which tend to be 6 to 8 miles. So I would get it an hour at a time. I found myself really wanting to read it a little more than that. And it's not because it's paced as a traditional thriller. It wasn't at all. Even though there is a lot of suspense and a lot of those thriller characteristics, it wasn't paced in the traditional thriller type story. She spent a lot of time on character development and showing Sydney coming to terms with this world in which she came to know visiting her mother. And it was just a different kind of dangerous world for her. I found it brilliant to classify this book as a thriller, because it reaches out to people who would normally just pick up a book for the suspense and all of the action that it contains. But because Deb Coletti put some social commentary in it, it felt like it was a really unique opportunity to communicate some of the challenges that women have, especially young women have in our world today. And even though it might be a little bit annoying to people who read thrillers on a more regular basis than I do, I found it a really brilliant way to cross genres. I think we're always looking for ways to infuse books with something more important, and Deb Coletti did a really great job of that. The characters in Girl Unframed, I felt, were really, really well done. I really loved Sydney's character and her somewhat innocence, but also desires to get outside of the box and to push boundaries and things like that. I really didn't like her mom, which I think was intentional. I think Coletti wanted us to not really like her mom, but it wasn't in a way that made you feel sorry for Sydney for the way that she had grown up. It was more an opportunity to admire Sydney for the normalcy, I guess, that she projected in spite of her mom, who was kind of more like a child than Sydney was. And like I said, this wasn't a typical thriller in the lots of action happening, but there was an underlying suspense and a foreboding that just made you want to turn the pages and find out what was happening. There were several instances where I thought, oh gosh, something bad is about to happen. And it was something in the way that Coletti put her phrases together and some of the things that Sydney would notice about her house and some of the things that were happening there that just, it really made you want to figure out what was going on. Even if you might have guessed it even before Sydney did, I felt like it was really well done, and it kept the pacing, even though it wasn't the fast pacing of traditional thrillers. It kept it moving and pages turning, but it was really well done in keeping the reader engaged. There was, of course, a love interest, but I felt like it was a really good decision because it kept some of the more serious parts a little lighter and a little brighter. I found the title really symbolic as well. Sydney's mother had a boyfriend who was an art dealer, and if you think about the frame of a picture, there's this painting or person or portrait that's contained within a frame. And that's kind of what Sydney was trying to figure out. She's trying to figure out, what is the framing of a woman? What are the expectations around beauty? And how can I unframe them? And so I felt like it was just a really good symbolic title. I don't usually care about titles all that much, but I really enjoyed this one. Overall, Girl Unframed was a well-written, well-articulated story, and I would consider reading it again. And I don't say that about many books, but I really, really enjoyed this one. I feel like books like Girl Unframed are so important for young women to read because they push the boundaries of what is expected of women and what is expected of beauty. And it's so important for young women to see other young women questioning those things and trying to push past those things. There was also a non-traditional family element that I always love to see in stories because I feel like not all children grow up in traditional families. And of course, Sydney has this mother who is more child than mother. She doesn't have a father who was around. She was kind of raised by her grandmother. Showing stories like that and young women who grow up to be strong and confident is important for other young people to see, because if they're in circumstances like that, they need to know that they can not only survive, but that they can overcome their circumstances and learn how to be themselves. As a writer, Girl Unframed reminded me to consider these circumstances that our characters go through, the situations that they have to overcome, and think about how they can be used to comment on a greater social evil. Of course, not every circumstance or character is going to naturally move into something like that, but just to consider those places where it might be used to do something good in the world and to impart some kind of greater truth to our readers. It was also a boundary pushing book, and I always really love those because I tend to be a writer who pushes boundaries, and I'd love to see more of those kinds of books out in the world. That's all for today's On My Shelf. If you would like an author's perspective on books, movies, TV shows, and sometimes even music, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next week.